So imagine you're trying to build the most magnificent state-of-the-art skyscraper the world has ever seen. Like, you've got the absolute best materials, billions in funding, top-tier workers. But there's a catch.
Let me guess, the workers refuse to talk to each other.
Exactly. The concrete pourers, the plumbers, the electricians, they absolutely refuse to speak to one another. They don't even share the same blueprints.
Right, which is a recipe for total disaster.
Total disaster. So the concrete team pours this, pristine, beautiful foundation, and the very next day, the plumbers show up with jackhammers to tear it apart because, well, they need to lay their pipes.
And then the electricians arrive a week later and tear up the pipes.
Exactly. It's this ridiculous, endless loop of just destroying each other's work.
And that right there is the exact historical reality of massive infrastructure projects in almost every large democracy. Just a tremendous amount of energy and capital spent undoing the friction of miscommunication.
Which is exactly why we are unpacking this today. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Treat today's session as your strategic war room briefing, because we are decoding a massive stack of notes on India's PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan.
And this is essentially a masterclass in governance. We are going to extract the hidden patterns here so you can build a high-level analytical toolkit for your own mental arsenal.
Right. And I want to emphasize right away to you listening, this is not just a typical news update about, building a few highways. We are looking at an initiative launched in October 2021 that is actively trying to rewrite the DNA of how a country operates.
Absolutely. We need to lock in the facts and data memory layer right now. The scale here is 100 lakh crore over 5 years.
Which is just a staggering amount of capital.
It really is. And the overarching goal, the structural problem being solved, is slashing the national logistics cost from a heavy 13% of GDP down to around 7.5%.
And if you understand the mechanics of the global economy, you know that driving logistics costs down is, well, it's the ultimate prerequisite for making India the business capital of the world.
Exactly. But before we get into the tech that makes this possible, let's go back to your skyscraper analogy. Historically, government ministries operated in strict isolation.
Right, like independent fiefdoms.
Totally walled off. You had the Ministry of Road Transport looking at their map and the Ministry of Railways looking at a completely different map. Telecom, power, shipping all operating in their own distinct bubbles.
So when the government decided to be globally competitive, they realized that just throwing money at the problem wouldn't work.
No, not at all. The problem wasn't a lack of ambition. It was a lack of synchronization.
Okay, so this Rs 100 lakh core isn't just a slush fund for random projects.
Right. What's fascinating here is that it shifts the focus from simply spending money to synchronizing that spend. The core mechanism is a centralized digital platform that initially integrated 16 key ministries.
Think of it as a massive multimodal umbrella, right?
Exactly. Before this, you had these colossal mega projects existing in parallel universes. You had Faratmala for roads.
Oh, and Sagarmala for the ports and coastlines.
Yeah, plus inland waterways, dry ports, and UDAN for regional aviation. All huge, all separate. But now they fall under the Network Planning Group, or NTG.
So instead of 5 different ministers holding 5 different paper maps, what does this actually look like? Are they just, sharing a Google Drive?
No, it's way more sophisticated than that. It is a geographic information system, a GIS platform. The NPG's mandate is to force interministerial coordination before a single shovel hits the dirt.
Okay, so if roads wants to plan a highway, they have to make sure railways and telecom are looking at the exact same digital alignment.
Yes, at the exact same time. It ensures seamless last-mile connectivity.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate here for a second. Because if we're looking at the government response framework, this scale is almost hard to wrap your head around.
It is massive.
Right, the sources know this is now a whole-of-government approach involving 44 central ministries and 36 states and union territories. Have you ever tried to get just 4 friends to agree on where to go for dinner?
Oh, it usually involves a lot of stalling, yeah.
Exactly. So how does a government put 44 ministries and 36 state governments into one room without the sheer volume of meetings stalling everything?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like a recipe for total paralysis.
Well, it would be if they were doing it through traditional meetings and physical files, but that's where the technology engine comes in. They removed the human bottleneck using advanced spatial planning tools.
And the heavy lifting here is done by ISRO, right?
Yeah.
The Indian Space Research Organization.
Yeah, specifically an institute called Besajan. They developed the satellite imagery and the mapping software.
So they basically built Google Maps on steroids for the government.
That's actually a great way to picture it. Imagine a digital map of the entire country, but it has hundreds of transparent data layers.
Like forest reserves, existing power lines, underground gas pipelines.
Exactly. And private land ownership, if you want to build something, you just turn all the layers on.
And instantly see where you are going to hit a wall. Which brings us to a mind-blowing statistic.
Uh-huh.
I really want you listening to remember this data point. Break down what happened with the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas.
Okay, so this is the perfect real-world velocity anchor. Historically, if that ministry wanted to lay a new gas pipeline, they had to conduct a detailed route survey.
Which meant sending people out in jeeps with clipboards, right?
Literally, yes. Mailing files to the Forest Department to see if the route crossed protected land, waiting winds, then mailing files to the local municipality. That process alone took 6 to 9 months.
Just for the report, not even digging the trench. That is wild.
Just to map the route. But now they use the Electronic Detail Route Survey, the EDRS, on the National Master Plan platform. They slashed that report creation time from 9 months down to literally 1 day.
Wait, really? 1 day? Here's where it gets really interesting for anyone analyzing economic policy. If you're a multinational corporation, time is capital.
Absolutely.
If you know pipeline routing takes 1 day instead of 3/4 of a year, the calculus of where you invest billions completely changes.
It is the literal definition of ease of governance translating directly into economic power. And we see this at the state level, too. Gujarat used the NMP for a 300-kilometer coastal corridor.
And a coastal corridor sounds like a jurisdictional nightmare to plan.
Usually, yes. You need dozens of no objection certificates or no-nos. But by visualizing overlapping jurisdictions on this GIS platform, they reduced the required no-Cs from 28 down to just 13.
Because they just routed around the 15 problems they would have blindly run into otherwise.
Exactly. And they also identified 156 critical infrastructure gaps regarding first and last mile connectivity across coal, steel, fertilizer, and food distribution.
Wow. Okay, so we have a system that is undeniably fixing logistics and clearing red tape. But as we move into the significance analysis, there was a massive pivot in these sources that I didn't see coming.
You mean the interlinking engine?
Yeah. Because fixing logistics is great, but this mapping capability unexpectedly unlocked a revolution in social governance and strategic planning.
Right. PM Gati Shakti evolved from a logistics tool into a master key for digital India and inclusive growth, because the same satellite imagery used for a gas pipeline can optimize social infrastructure.
So how does that work in practice? How does a space agency's map help social governance?
Take Uttar Pradesh. They used a localized version called the Paunch portal. Historically, deciding where to build a new public school was a mix of outdated census data and guesswork.
Right.
But now, UP can overlay a map of population density with a map of every existing school.
And the blind spots just light up. You see an area with thousands of families, but no school within 10 kilometers.
Precisely. You are pinpointing the exact optimal location based on spatial reality. Nationally, they've mapped over 10 lakh Anganwadi centers.
Which is 1 million rural child care centers.
Yeah.
That is fascinating, taking the guesswork out of public welfare. And Goa used it for disaster management, mapping flood-prone areas along the Yamuna River, right?
Yes. And the Ministry of Tribal Affairs is identifying infrastructure gaps for particularly vulnerable tribal groups, or PVTG, using the PM Janman portal.
So it's not just cargo. It's getting clean water to remote areas. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, there's a heavy strategic and defense angle here, too.
Oh, absolutely. There is a profound national security transformation occurring on this exact same grid. They are actively mapping defense corridors.
And the 5G rollout, too.
Yeah, in October 2022, they launched the Gati Shakti Sanchar portal, which drove the rapid nationwide rollout of 5G telecom services. Because if you know where the roads and power lines are, laying fiber optic cable is vastly easier.
And then there's the green energy corridor.
Right, the 13-gigawatt green energy corridor stretching strategically from Leh and Ladakh all the way to Kaithal and Haryana.
Getting permissions through the Himalayas used to take a decade. So what does this all mean for you listening? It means India is shifting from basic capability building to strategic dual-use spatial governance.
That is the perfect way to phrase it. Everything is connected,
But, okay, let's transition to the critical evaluation layer.
Yeah.
Because mapping a million Anganwadis and rolling out 5G sounds flawless on paper. But no 100 lakh crore plan exists without severe friction.
True.
We have 44 central ministries and 36 states and UTs on this platform. That is a lot of differing priorities. What are the actual implementation gaps?
Well, there are a few realistic limitations we need to highlight. The biggest challenge is federal and state capacity gaps. Not all states have the technical capacity or resources to use these advanced GIS tools.
Right, so you get a regional disparity. A tech-savvy state accelerates, while another state falls behind because their officers aren't trained on the software.
Exactly. The second massive issue is data accuracy. The system relies entirely on ministries inputting updated data.
Classic garbage in, garbage out problem.
Yeah, if the data is 5 years old, you get huge discrepancies and bottlenecks. And then there are financial constraints. Aligning budgets across departments for multi-sector projects is incredibly complex and risks delays.
Because if roads has the money this year, but telecom doesn't have the money for their cables until next year, everything stalls.
Right, forcing a reliance on external financing. And finally, we have to mention ethical and environmental concerns.
Yeah, a straight digital line might cut right through a protected forest or a village.
Exactly. Aggressive infrastructure pushes carry inherent risks of environmental degradation and displacing local communities.
So efficiency cannot come at the cost of ecology.
Right.
So if we are packaging this into a way forward framework, say you had to formulate a 250-word policy brief on this, how do we actually navigate these challenges?
Write this down. The way forward requires 3 pillars. First, institutional strengthening to fix the data accuracy, enforce real-time data compliance.
Okay.
Second, capacity building. We need massive training programs for state-level officers on GIS to bridge that regional gap. And third, regulatory reforms to balance rapid infrastructure with environmental safeguards.
Okay, let's do a rapid 30-second revision capsule for you listening just to lock this knowledge in. Hit me with the 5 must-remember facts.
All right. Launched October 2021, RS 100 lakh crore budget, target of 7.5% logistics cost, ISRO BICE again technology, and pipeline surveys reduced to 1 day.
Beautiful. Now give me 5 analytical keywords to use in exam or briefing.
Interministerial silos, multimodal connectivity, spatial governance, network planning group, and whole-of-government approach.
And what's one probable question our listeners should consider?
Think about this. How does PM Gati Shakti resolve the structural bottlenecks of infrastructure development while addressing the challenges of cooperative federalism?
That is a phenomenal analytical frame.
It is, and it raises an important question I want to leave you with. As we build the ultimate digital map of the nation's physical reality, tying together our defense, our pipelines, and our schools into one master system, how will this unprecedented centralization of spatial data reshape the balance of power between the center and the states over the next decade?
Wow. Information is power, and mapping the entire physical reality onto one grid is a massive centralization of that power. That is a brilliant thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep unpacking these massive ideas and apply this strategic thinking to whatever field you're conquering next.